Hey, this is the antisocial socialite back at it again. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you are new to the channel or you have not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for, darling? Hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell, so when I get to run in this mouth, baby, you are in the loop. You see the title, you know what time it is. Sex education and marriage contracts. Yes, you heard me correctly. I was listening to an infamous YouTuber recently, and this is something that I wanted to do. You know, I got a lot of videos in my head, man, but I got to find the time to sit down and really do them. As you can probably hear, I'm out on the road again. This time I'm chilling in the sun, so it's okay. But one of the things that, following on from the previous video, talking about this idea of people becoming asexual as a result of abstinence. I personally don't believe that. I believe it's more of a mental blockage. Like if you have a negative perception of sex or you find it awkward or dirty, then you're going to, whether you're a virgin or whether you've been abstaining, you're going to feel awkward about, getting, undressed with somebody. And it's to do with mentality. It's not really to do with abstaining per se. Okay, we just need to normalize. Actually, wait, we live in the West. We need to tone it down. But our understanding and the way we feel comfortable around the idea of sex, especially for the people who are like very conservative or ultra religious, it definitely needs to be something that people feel comfortable discussing and talking about in a mature manner. Okay, now the reason why I called this video education and a contract, because I was going to do them separately, but I might as well just put them together. It's really important. I do agree sexual compatibility is something that's very important, because sex is the way that you and a man or you and your woman bond. That's how you reinforce the relationship, through sexual interaction. And what's sad is obviously a lot of people are told that you should enjoy your days of sowing oats and being wild and reckless and having your fun, and then you're kind of all funned out by the time you get into your marriage. You end up getting married and it's like, oh, this person doesn't do it like this, they don't do it like this, they don't kiss me like this person used to, and things like this. And as a result, you're kind of comparing your partner to your exes, or you're still kind of alpha widowed, as some would say, or you're hung up on an ex, and that can really put a strain on a relationship. Well, I'm not really talking about relationship, I'm talking about marriage, because we are trying to promote that, wait or abstain until you're actually in a committed situation. Now, I know that the laws are not good for men. There's a lot of injustice that a man can experience. There's a lot of inequality in the marriage laws. Okay, the reason why I support marriage is because I believe, not just the fact that I believe it's a divine institution, but I believe it's the safest place for you to raise children. It's supposed to be an institution where it's safe for you to have intimacy, and it's also supposed to reflect the relationship Christ has with his church. Now, obviously, if you're not a Christian, that last point is not really going to relate to you. Now, when you look at the statistics, we all can see children who grow in a two-parent household, even when both parents are not really that amazing, they tend to generally just do better than kids who grow up on their own. And I know it's becoming culturally acceptable for people to be raised by a single parent, and I think that cultural shift is why even some children who grow up in a single parent household, they're starting to still do okay, but it's not what it should be, because there's a consistency. Like if everybody around you grows up in a certain environment and in a certain way, you're going to perceive that as the norm, so you don't feel abnormal. I think back in the day, because there was such a stigma around being a single mother and growing up without a father, it did cause people to have psychological problems, that some of them they felt a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of embarrassment. But obviously that shame and guilt is gone, and I'm not saying it's a shame, but it's definitely not a step in the right direction, because although you may be happy as a single parent, that child still wants to know where half of their identity came from. And there are other things like the benefits of extended family, the fact that you have generally an increased number of resources and things like that, that make two-parent households and the institution of marriage a better option. Now, I firmly believe that if a man really wants to marry you, he'll propose. Okay, so if he knows like the law is not on his side, at any minute she can just wake up one day and say, you know what, I've had enough of this, I'm off, and I'm taking the kids with me, oh by the way, and the house. You know, if he really still wants to drop to one knee, you know that that guy really loves you. He really wants to be in a committed relationship with you. So for that reason, as I said in a previous video, the fact that the law makes men have to be accountable means that if they choose to want, you know, to ask you for your hand in marriage, they genuinely want to be married to you. And that's it's a shame that it's got like this, but because of feminism, because women have moved away from traditional roles, because we have to chase money, which means we cannot live in small towns all the time and closed communities with extended family around, you know, we don't have the patriarchal structure in the black community to hold men accountable. Like, if you get my daughter pregnant, which is a sentence I really hate, you know, you have to marry her. And in fact, I don't necessarily agree with that either. It's kind of like you don't want to force on people the mentality, well, if you get me pregnant or if we end up getting pregnant, then we have to get married, because if you don't really love the person, you know, you're not doing yourself or the kids a favor. It's kind of like, let's just try to promote prevention is better than cure. Instead of trying to fix the problem after the situation has gone bad, let's just try and get it right the first time. Okay, there's no guarantees, but there's more guarantees if you have the right mindset than if you go into it looking like, you know, let's just see what happens, because you might not like what you get. Okay, so let me move away from the whole sex education bit. I actually would propose, I shouldn't even say this in a YouTube video. If I see this, I swear to God, I'm going to sue somebody for copyright. I actually might create a marriage contract. Now, I know you have a legally binding contract that you sign when you get married, and I know when you stand before the minister or the officer or whoever that you have to say vows. But I really believe that there are certain questions that you should be asking. Like, obviously, as you get to know a person, and as I talked before, you've got dating, which I don't necessarily believe should be exclusive, because if you're dating, you're not sleeping together. I believe that dating, especially in the early stages, first maybe 3 to 6 months, it shouldn't be extravagant. It shouldn't be dates like $100 dates and trips and purses and all this kind of stuff. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's wise. You know, if you're somebody who's easily swayed by money, you could easily be got by somebody who uses that to, you know, to manipulate you. If you're somebody who is a bit gullible, or you lead with your money in a bad way, obviously it's great that you have the money, that people are flocking to you, you're attracting gold diggers, which means you have some gold to dig. That's a good thing. But at the same time, what it means is you put yourself in a position where you could be exploited, and that's going to make you hard towards dating. And again, you're not going to be able to give to the people who really deserve for you to give to them, because you've become maybe jaded by the fact that you keep getting used. So to cut out the distrust that's created through usury, I just say in the early stages, do not go there. Okay? And then as you progress, if you realize that this person is somebody who you'd really like to see, if you could build a life with that person, you then become exclusive, and maybe you move into now courting, like you're really looking at this person as a serious consideration for marriage. And so now you, obviously over time, you've been going out, you've been engaging in activities, you're starting to get to know the person, maybe you've met some of their friends and family, but now you're really gonna have to start digging a lot deeper into who this person is at their core. Like, what are your core values? What was your childhood like? What was the relationship with your parents like? And this is where the marriage contract comes in. As you're starting to get to know the person, I believe that you should literally get a piece of paper and write out a contract of what you believe you bring to the table and what you expect in return, and you sign it. I literally am not kidding you. I am like, I like this, I like that, I don't like this, this is where I want to be in 5 years, this is where I want to be in 10 years. And I know that sounds very clinical, and a lot of people have talked about don't do the whole list thing. The list thing is dangerous, because if you prioritize things that are not that important, or if you really are rigid with the list to the point where you're not looking at people as people, you could miss the connection with somebody who you really would, who is actually the best fit for you. Sometimes people go on what they think they need or think they want versus really, how can I say, really just looking to find somebody who has that spark and that connection. Because you should marry, in my opinion, at the core, you should really love the person for the person. If they had no money tomorrow, if they had no job when they're aging in 20, 30, 40 years, you will still crazy about who that person is at their core, then that's the kind of person you should marry. Okay, so I know recently there was a video about you know, the man who you need, he may not come in the packaging you want. And this is the thing that you need to be worried about. What's in the package, not the packaging. Okay? But the problem with a lot of people is, you know, it's not either or. You have to understand that if everything fell apart with this person, who they are, you know, could you guys be living in like a homeless shelter and look on each other and still have pure love for each other? If that's the kind of person you're beside, then you have a bond that is stronger than just the superficial. Okay, but I don't want to say love is not enough, because it is. Because if you have love, you'll be happy, and if your goal is to be happy, then that's really all you really need. The other stuff are just frills and benefits that make life a bit easier. But it's important to understand that you're trying to help this person, and they're trying to help you to build a life. I mean, maybe if you don't want kids, it's not a big deal. You can live anywhere or do anything. If you want to have children, sometimes it's a bit more, you've got to have a bit more forethought in there. It's, you know, finding love and making relationships work is not an easy thing. And I can say that in the long-term relationships that I was in, and in fact as a person, I could not be with a person for what they have, because I don't really need anything that they have. And that's not because I'm just balling like that, you know, I just got it like that, but I just don't need it. I'm just content. So I need to know that the person I get with, I love them as a person, and I like you. I have to like you. I have to like you on a good day, when we're disagreeing, when we're arguing, when you're saying something that I don't want to hear, you know, when you're not giving me what I want, or when I'm not feeling like giving you what you want, or, you know, I have to know that at the end of the day, no matter what's going on around us, it does not change the way I feel about you as a person. And that's the core of the situation, okay? I have to like you and love you for who you are as a person enough that no matter what's happening around, I still do not have different feelings about you, okay? And that's why you've got to take your time, because at the end of the day, when you're in that new relationship, of course you're going to be caught up, of course you're going to be romantic, and you've got on the rose-tinted glasses and you don't see any flaws or red flags. But if you step back and take your time, you will actually start to see this bit's not quite right. And sometimes you want to go in a direction, or you want to reach a goal, but you don't have a roadmap, and that's where the contract comes in. You know, I said before, take a piece of paper, split it into 3 columns. The non-negotiables, and I would say try to keep the non-negotiables quite low, because at the end of the day, no one's perfect, and you still have to examine why this thing is a deal breaker, okay? Then you've got the preferential stuff, the things I'd really like this person to have, but maybe if they don't have it, I'll I'll sleep. I'm willing to compromise. And I think that list should be longer. And then the stuff that I really don't care about, I don't know if I would say that's the longest list, but definitely we don't want to be people sweating the small stuff. Okay, if we're making everything equally valuable, you're gonna have like a list as long as your arm, and half of it is irrelevant, and you're probably gonna end up with somebody who's the opposite of what you said everything on the list anyway. And then you think, oh, I didn't know I had so many opportunities to meet the right guy, but I kept picking all the guys according to the list. And it's like, because your list was too specific, you're trying to marry a man that doesn't exist. Half of the things on there are irrelevant. You've just sabotaged yourself. Okay, so by knowing this thing is a core thing I cannot work with, like the thought of dealing with somebody who has this non-negotiable thing, it literally repulses me. That's fine, because you're entitled to your preferences, but they have to be, in my opinion, reasonable. They have to not be like, I don't know, because some non-negotiables, they're to do with core, like maybe trauma and things that you have. It's not them, it's you, and it's like, I just can't get over it. But I just think that list should be as small as possible, because you don't want to cut off too many options. Okay, but once you've kind of got that sorted, then I believe that you should sit down and literally write out a contract. We are merging lives. We are joining our finances. We're joining our families. We're bringing new people into the world. Maybe we already have people in the world, so we're blending a family together. We are doing all kinds of things here. This is a merger. And just like how you wouldn't go into a business deal and you wouldn't ask for a contract and you wouldn't get someone to look over it, you cannot go into a marriage without knowing these are my terms and conditions, and this is what I bring, and this is what I expect back. Because a lot of the times people talk about, well, I got into this relationship and the person was like this and then they changed. Sometimes they didn't change. They just literally, they weren't in the honeymoon phase anymore. You guys have settled into a routine and now you've become complacent, or the person who's no longer in that, on cloud 9 phase, now they've just kind of settled down and reverted back to their normal self. Again, that's why we have to take our time, because it's not even that people are trying to necessarily be deceptive, but when you're in the newness of a relationship, you just can't see certain things and you act certain ways and you become all goofy, and then it's like, once the complacency sets in, now people are talking about, you changed, you deceived me, you don't do the things you used to do, and it's like, well, it's just crazy. So actually sitting down and getting those thoughts out on paper is a great way for you to actually discuss your long-term goals as a couple, how compatible we are at our core, because we have core values that should be, in my opinion, connected to our deal breakers. And so because those are things at your core you need, then I can understand why you can't tolerate in another person. Okay, but the things, relationship is about a lot of compromise, because you are still two individual people trying to live together as one. And then obviously beyond the stuff that's negotiable and the things you're willing to compromise on, then you've got things that are really not that important. Whether they're present or not, they add no value or they don't detract from your life whatsoever. Okay, now, so get a piece of paper and say, my name is in 5 years I want to be, this is what I'd like to accomplish, this is what I want for our family, this is what I want for our children, this is what I want for our pets. And you're going to really spell it out. I mean, even if you don't have a partner, even if you're not dating anybody, you cannot become a wife once you get the ring on the finger. You cannot be a husband once you get the ring on the finger. You have to be in training for that. So things like this will help you to see, in this area I'm strong, in this area I'm weak, this is my skill. We're talking a lot about dating and mating, and it's not a small thing. It's not a small thing. And it's not enough just to say, well, we're going to have the fairy tale wedding, and once we have the wedding, that's it, we have life. No, after the wedding, there's a whole new, I mean, the wedding is not the finish line. The wedding is the start line. And that's why a lot of women, what they really want is a wedding. They don't want a marriage. They want to be able to show off on everybody that I got married, but they don't actually want to do the work that comes with being a wife. And the way that being a wife is less work is to be in training. Understand what the needs of a man is, because you know this is a channel to bash women, so obviously I'm talking to you, the ladies. Shout out to all the gents listening. This is universal. This one is what's that thing? Unisex. You see, I'm an equal opportunist, you know, but I bash women a bit harder. Oh my God, this man is talking so loud.
If I call them, let me tell you how it is something.
I'm an equal opportunist, so everybody gets a little bit of bashing, but obviously I'm going to bash the ladies a bit harder. Hi ladies. And yeah, you know, you want to be in training, man. If you know men like cooking, learn to cook. If you can't cook, at least be willing to read a recipe. Have a few signature dishes that you know without anybody's help you can just knock it out. And obviously, if you know that you're not into cleaning, try and find a friend who needs some extra money and be like, look, I hate cleaning, you need cash, let's work something out. Because when your hubby comes home and the house is spotless, he's not going to be asking you who did these dishes. He doesn't care. He's just glad to come home to a clean property, and that's it. So you're like, I've been busy all day making phone calls, trying to find someone to wash these dishes. And he's going to be like, as long as it's done, I'm happy. Okay? So at the end of the day, catering to your man, enjoying taking care of your home and your kids, that has to be the top priority. Knowing what a man likes and what he needs, that's how you become a wife in training. Keeping your man happy, it's not only just going to keep him happy, it's going to keep you happy, because once he's happy, he's more likely to be giving, he's more likely to be loving, he's more likely to be kind. Whatever you want, he's just going to say, here you go honey, take it. And it's like, seeing the joy and the pleasure, it just means you have a home that is not full of contention. There's no contention and there's no tension. Everybody's just relaxed. So as we all know, the scripture says it's better to live on the corner of the roof than with a contentious woman. If you're going home to a battle axe every day, you know, this is the kind of stuff that drives people away from us. So we don't want to be like, I don't do dishes, I don't cook, I don't clean. Then what are you there for, with all due respect, you know? So taking pleasure in catering to your man, videos coming up. It's definitely something we need to talk about, because in cultures where people love their men and they just take real pleasure, they really find joy in seeing that happiness on their man's face. Who doesn't want a household like this? What child doesn't enjoy growing up in a house like this? And then they go out into the world with that high expectation, and you know, this understanding, I don't need to settle for a guy who lounges on the couch all day, eating out my fridge, playing PlayStation, because my father was not that man and my mother was not that kind of woman. You see, but because we grow up in these households that are very masculine, you know, the women are very dominant, the men are often in a compromised position. The women think it's okay to be strong and independent, but their masculine energy attracts feminine men. But that's not what we're talking about here. Okay? We're talking about the contract. So I literally believe people, when they're getting close to getting married, they really have to have like some type of physical piece of paper where they talk about, this is what my terms and conditions are, this is what is really important to me, this is what I would like to achieve in the next 5, 10, 20 years, the number of kids I'd like to have and how many I'm willing to have, and where we'd like to live and how we'd like to live, and homeschool versus, you know, public education or private school, or how many holidays, or how much are we going to travel, where would you like to go? These are the kind of things that really need to be talked about, so when you get into your marriage, you know who you're getting into a marriage with. You know what you're literally signing up for. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's not the right way to go about it because it's too strict and too stringent. But definitely this loosey-goosey, let's just sleep together, oops, we got a baby, now we're connected for life, let's try and work it out, we kind of like each other, the sex is good, we're kind of together, we have a child together, but we don't really like each other, I don't really know who you are, you know, that clearly isn't working out for us. Economically, it's not working out for us. And that's why we have no power as an ethnic group, because we do not have economic power. And you cannot have economic power with broken families. Okay? Every other group that you see really thriving, things like family and marrying well is at the core of their community. Okay? They may not stay married, but as they leave one marriage, they're in another marriage because they understand the concept of merging their resources to progress their community. Okay? So the sex education bit, you know, this whole idea of people being asexual, I think it's kind of like a fear of exploration. And I don't agree that you should just go so wild oats, because that's going to cause you to experience maybe physical, emotional damage. You could end up with an unplanned pregnancy or like a disease. So trial and error is not something that I would advise. But I do believe that people should take classes on how to be erotic, classes on how to, and we're not talking about no crude, weird stuff. We're talking about like a literal lecture. How to make your spouse aroused, how to bring them to orgasm, how to, you know, places to touch them, things that you can say to make them feel happy, things that people don't like. Do you understand? Because at the end of the day, intimacy is a huge part of a marriage. And if the person you're with cannot sexually stimulate you, especially if you've been sexually active before and you've had pleasurable experiences, it's natural to compare your current spouse to your partners from before. Okay? And unfortunately, if the person is not measuring up, this can bring the end of a marriage. You know, I don't necessarily support that, but that's why you guys, maybe in your marriage contract, you need to talk about what you like to try, or what you don't like, and things like this. Okay? Because it is something that needs to be discussed, not necessarily tried. We're not cars. You don't have to try before you buy and then say, I don't really like this one. You know, kind of kept my money back. Okay? So, but this is the kind of stuff that needs to be discussed in a mature manner, so that people understand it's important for me to know how to make my partner happy in that area, because it is significant. It's one of the top reasons why people, you know, file for divorce, apart from money and maybe infidelity because they're unhappy, but also infidelity maybe because they're not, you know, sexually satisfied. And you know, you see some of these women, you know, walking down the street, they look miserable as sin, and I think, I know you got a baby, but you probably don't have a man rocking your world in the bedroom, because if you've got all that cash and you still look that glum chum, something's not right. And then you see some broke people and they've got a proper spring in their step. And you think to yourself, wow, okay. So it's important that holistically, shout out to they know who. It's important that our whole being is being nurtured when we're getting into romantic relationships. Sex is very important. Our boundaries, our desires, our goals and aspirations, they all do have to be fed into. And it's all about reciprocity. You know, you have to be willing to give, as much as you're willing to take, and to understand that this is about compromise, sacrifice, and also catering to your spouse. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.